How about now? Oh, there we go. All right. Victor, thank you for bringing the energy in. Welcome, everybody, to week 4. I know Victor's doing good. How's everybody else doing? Yeah? Yeah, okay, good. So we are in our art and architecture week. Architecture being architecture and art being our action research team program. So we're going to have Isis and Ryan Mullen talking to you about that in just a few minutes. Okay. Oh, right. So I'm not giving it to Isis. I'm giving it to Haley. So here's Haley, everyone.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to let you guys know we have 2 special things going on today. We have our regular speakers who are going to be amazing, Michael and Mia Lehrer. They'll talk about sustainable architecture. But we also have Isis and Ryan who are going to present about action research teams. You're about to find out what those are if you don't know. So first of all, who here has loved every single speaker we've had so far? If you have, stand up. It's okay if you haven't. It's just your preference. Okay, who here has loved at least one speaker that we've had so far? All right. And who is still enrolled in this class? Stand up also. Oh, okay, well. So point is, you guys are all standing up here. I'm assuming that you guys, you can stay standing up. I'm assuming you guys like ESLP, and you're sad to see it go at the end of the quarter, but it's not the end. We have action research teams that are happening in the winter and spring, and you guys are going to find out about them in a second. But I want you guys to turn to your neighbors right now. Just pick a neighbor, turn to them, say hi, introduce yourself. And I want you guys real quick, the action research teams center around things that we want to change about UCLA, that we want to make more sustainable. So I want you guys to just come up with something right now between the 2 of you. What's something that you could make more sustainable about UCLA? 1 minute, go. Okay, you guys can sit down if you want. Okay, did anyone come up with any really good ideas you want to share? Just briefly? Yeah, what was your idea? Better bicycle practices. I'm with you on that. Anyone else? Good ideas? Yeah. Perfect. So reusable mugs. Fantastic. Anyone else? Other good ideas? Okay, well, you guys are going to find out. Oh, did you have one? Perfect. Recycling bins everywhere, actually, yeah. Awesome. Well, so you guys are warmed up, and I'm going to pass it off to Isis and Ryan, who will describe to you guys what you all could be doing this winter and spring. Really exciting stuff. So, without further ado.
Thank you, Haley. Round of applause for Awesome. So you guys hopefully all know me. My name's Isis, if you weren't here the first day. And this is Ryan Mullen, and together we are going to be leading the action research teams on campus this year. So if you have any questions about it, either one of us is good. You guys heard my little brief bio, but here's Ryan to give a 2-second.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan, as Isis said. I'm a third-year global studies major. Any other global studies majors in here? Nice. All right. Yeah, we're small, right? And then environmental systems and society minor, which if you have any interest in, this class is huge for, as Isis will explain to you later. And that's enough about me. So, oh, and I was a leader of one of these teams last year. I'll be talking about it a little bit, and Spencer will be going into depth even more. So here's Isis.
So you guys are probably thinking, what is action research? And that's a good question. So for ESLP, it's one of our 3 facets. You guys are all sitting in the lecture series right now. Hopefully you'll come to a film screening. And this is our 3rd aspect of it, and it kind of gets students more involved. Instead of just sitting in a class, they can actually get up and do something to make UCLA more sustainable. So what action research is, as opposed to normal research where you do something and then you type up a long report and it kind of sits on somebody's desk and nothing really happens with it, maybe it gets published. Action research is the complete opposite. It's really hands-on. You work with a bunch of different people, and you're always going back and rethinking about what the problem is. So this little diagram kind of explains it, where you start with a problem, you plan it, you act out what you want the solution to be, and then you observe and reflect, and you do the process all over again. And together, that kind of continual loop makes it action research, so that you're not just doing research for the purpose of doing research. You're doing research to change something, hence the action in that part of it. So Ryan's going to tell you what it means for UCLA.
Oh, and for those of you who were a part of art last year, you remember that diagram from that lovely book that we had? Well, as far as we know, we will not be repeating that book this year, so you all can be happy about that. So as far as UCLA, action research is basically just finding a sustainability problem on campus, fixing it, and well, doing the research to fix it, and then presenting that research to the person in the administration or staff that can actually make it happen. It's a 20-week process, so you sign up for winter and spring quarter, and you can choose to either be a member or a leader. And members will sign up for 185B, which is a 2-unit class, and leaders sign up for 185C, which is a 3-unit class. And leaders get the extra unit because there's a whole lot more responsibility and work involved with being a leader. Can you go back one slide real quick? And so the big message is that students who do the research, you are able to make real lasting change here. And Spencer will be up in a second to talk about his project. And the projects that we did all last year actually created real change. Like we really accomplished stuff that we're proud of later. I'll give a few examples, but it's not actually hokey. We make new things happen. So there we go. So the general art team will consist of 1 team leader or 2 co-leaders and 3 to 5 team members. We had some pretty huge teams last year that we're trying to cut back on a bit. And you'll work with 1 or 2 stakeholders. That could be staff people on the Hill and on-campus housing. They could be the sustainability coordinator for the campus. You can pick and choose. And yeah. So this is an overview of the 8 teams that we had last year. I was the leader of the Green Living Project, along with my lovely co-leaders Spencer and Haley and Kathy, who graduated. And we had a number of other great teams. 3 of us made the Daily Bruin. 1 of us made, what station covered it? CNN? NBC?
Yeah, CNN.
Right? They had some news report done on them. That was Waste Watchers. Yeah, I don't remember which one it was. Victor? Or yeah. Right, ESPN. So take, for example, the Green Living Project. That was made up of 3 different teams, energy, water, and waste. And those teams went to the dorms, and they tried to figure out ways just to make students live more sustainably. And they got a lot of work done. We did around 9,000 surveys, or not 9,000, 900 surveys, 9,000. 1,800? Or 900 per team, yeah. So 1,800 surveys, and we actually went into students' rooms, gave them electricity monitors, we had them time their showers, we collected trash from entire floors for weeks at a time, and we got some really incredible data and actually made some terrific change. So here's Spencer to talk about the waste team.
All right, yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm back. So as Ryan said, I was one of the 3 co-leaders of the Green Living Project. My team, we called ourselves the Zero Waste Floor Experiment. And I know, raise your hand, where are my team members at? Mike's here, is Jagrup here? There's Jagrup. We got a couple team members here, and Ryan was our fearless supreme leader. But yeah, so my other team members here, wow. It's okay. Okay, so anyways, so we looked at composting in the dorms. So how do we divert more waste in the dorms, specifically through composting? Here's an action shot of our research and some of the stuff we did. I'll get into it more in detail here. Context, Ryan already explained this, so I don't really need to go over it. But waste, water, energy, Ryan on top. Our powers combined form Captain Planet. Sorry, I don't know why I put that. Anyways, this was kind of, just to give you an idea of the scope of the project, this is a partial list of all the people that we worked with on the project. Rob Cadota and Robert Gilbert are highlighted because they were our lead stakeholders. And so it was obviously making a lot of connections, working with a lot of people. Here's even more. So what do we actually do, though? How are we going to get composting started in the dorms? Currently, in almost all the dorms, there's trash and there's recycling. That's it. What we wanted to do, we wanted to ask, is composting feasible in a large dorm setting? What kind of diversion targets can we expect? Would students like it? Would it work logistically with housekeeping? All these issues. So what we decided to do were these, what we called waste audits. And we did 3 of them, and basically what we did was we closed the trash chutes in the dorm, in that particular floor, for exactly 7 days. You can kind of see here our jerry-rig duct tape sealing the trash chute closed. It's not all super official, but it worked. And so in that time, while the trash chute was closed, we installed different bins. So rather than having just one big recycling bin on the floor and lots of trash bins, we had, this is weird, we had just one trash bin, one compost bin, and one recycling bin, all of equal size, right there together. And that's where students took all their waste. Within their individual rooms, on 2 of the audits, we had these side saddle bins, they're called. So that way, students, they already have their recycling and they have their trash, so they could do compost in this 3rd side saddle bin without taking a lot of room. So that way they could sort out their trash and compost and recycling in their room before going out to the bins in the lounge. So it makes it more convenient. We posted up signs everywhere. Here are a bunch of our cute signs and stuff that we made. Sandra Harfster made these too, actually. Bathrooms, we had compost bins instead of trash because all those paper towels, when you're just drying your hands, that's all compostable. Here's another sign. Jagroot made this one. Just general stuff, just trying to get the awareness out as much as possible to the students, the residents of the floors, that there's this big change for this week happening with your waste habits. So wise up. We even got Oscar the Grouch in on the act. So in terms of the actual procedure, what did we do? Mike is modeling perfectly the good form for weighing the trash. That here, it's a digital scale that you hang on the trash from. And basically, twice a day, we had members come and take out all the waste from all the categories and weigh it. And then in 2 of the 3 audits, what we also did was resort each category. So this was the really fun task of going through item by item in all of the trash and all of the compost and all of the recycling and resorting it. So if someone put a banana peel into the recycling, that needed to be resorted into the compost. And so we took every single item for an entire week of 3 floors trash and sorted them out. So that got gross at times. But it gave us a lot of really great data. And when we were done, we just took it to the dumpsters that were appropriate. Here's to give you an idea of the signage. This was in Sproul 2 South. These were signs that we put up over the bins. We actually put on the actual physical items to give people a more visual display of what was going on. And we found that to be very effective. So I won't go through all the data of all the audits just because that get a little repetitive, but to give you an idea, here is the data of the Sproul 2 South audit specifically. And at first this graph might be a little confusing. I'm just going to walk you through it. So up top left, so this was, that pie chart is the percentages before we resorted it. So just the students and the residents, when they put their trash into which bin, this tells you where they put it. And even before any corrections by us, there was a near 80% diversion rate. After sorting, that top right pie chart, that's after we put it all in the right category. So this is kind of an idealized result. This is what would happen if everybody was always putting their stuff in the right bin. And we achieved a near 90% diversion rate, 87.6%. And then down here are the totals before and after. So you see that composting went up, recycling went up, and trash went down when we resorted. The most important thing is that these totals in the compost category, 145 pounds, 165 pounds, that before was all going to trash. So that's 145 pounds in 1 week that was diverted just from one floor. So that's huge. I mean, basically from there you think, what could we scale that up? What sort of impact would this be if this was scaled out to, say, a Hill-wide program? And that's what we tried to do. We were able to take all of our data and get a per capita, so per person, waste total per week. And this is what we found. So on average, the students produced, before sorting, they produced a total of that much recycling, composting, trash, and then after sorting, look at that. So that's 12.9% trash. The rest is divertible either through composting and recycling. So that is an 87.1% diversion rate, which is huge. I mean, I think the number speaks for itself there. In terms of the projection, here's what I was just telling you about. This is a little confusing. Basically, what we did is we took the data and got a per person average, and then we said, okay, so per person, they produce this many pounds of compost, trash, recycling in a week. Take that by how many weeks in the school year, and take that by how many students in the school are in a particular building to get a potential target for how much we could divert if we took this large scale. And you can see there, this is for composting only. You look at the total, that highlighted thing. Ideally, if we could have everyone sorting their stuff well and a program throughout the whole hill, over 500,000 pounds of compost a year. That's huge. We were absolutely blown away by those numbers, and yeah, so I think that's a huge number. Results. So from that and just from our overall goings on, what we decided is that yes, a compost program is very much possible. Students are overwhelmingly in favor. I didn't talk about this in the slides, but all the students we talked to were very geared up about it. Everyone was really excited. And that we could easily get a 70% diversion rate. That's a low end estimate. So recommendations for the future. This is a picture, it's kind of hard to tell. That's Deneb. These are all the new proposed dorms coming up. Yeah, it's pretty wild. The construction's going on right now. But what we recommended formally to our main stakeholders was that we actually, in the dorms that exist now, convert the trash chutes into compost chutes so that the compost takeout would be a lot easier. And then we just have smaller trash bins on the side to emphasize the trash, or to emphasize the larger role of compost versus trash. And in the future projected buildings that I just showed you, they actually are designed with 2 chutes per building, one for recycling and one for trash right now is what it's projected, and we're trying to get them to change that to be 1 recycling and 1 compost. But the great thing is that we're not even, those are for in the future. We're already seeing direct results from our findings right now. I actually just spoke with Robert Gilbert today, one of our direct stakeholders, and he's let me know that in the Hitch Suites, does anybody live in Hitch Suites? Nice. So they are actually piloting a compost program right now modeled after ours. UCLA, Office of Residential Life and Housing Administration has put together a pilot program in Hitch Suites right now modeled after ours. And basically the goal is to pilot it this quarter in Hitch, and hopefully, as long as it's successful, which I'm sure it will, expand that and scale it up to across the hill. So we actually have a very good chance of reaching that hundreds of thousands of pounds diverted goal that we had set. So, and that's making Captain Planet smile and everybody smile. So, yeah, so that's that. So if this is a type of thing that sounds interesting to you at all, maybe not specifically like digging into trash. Not all the projects are about trash, but you can do some really great things, and that's it. So Isis can tell you more about the rest of the program.
So getting back to the impact real quick of one of these programs, 500,000 pounds of trash is enormous. And we actually told this to our stakeholders here. And I don't know how many of you know, but UCLA is going to be required to divert 75% of all of its waste in 3 years. And they don't know how they're going to do it exactly. And when we presented this information where we said we can get you over 80% on all of the dorms in the Hill, they leapt on it. They said, you know, this is the thing that we need so that we can meet our goals by 2012. So you can make change and people will actually jump on it because they need this stuff to happen and they need students to make it happen.
So as Ryan was saying, you know, people at UCLA, they do want to make this change, but they need us to do the actual research to find those numbers. So another great thing about this is that you actually get units for it. I know we're all strapped for units right now because of the budget cut, so it's a great way to add a class and change Yeah, and it also counts for honors credit, so all of you honors people out there. It's 2 units for team members and 3 units for team leaders. That's each quarter, so you can get up to 6 units if you're a leader. And you should do art for a lot of different reasons. You meet a lot of staff and faculty. They have the power to hire you later on and maybe give you a job. You get upper division graded units. You meet people. You form really tight bonds with your team members over the 20 weeks. And it's great for a resume, and you build a lot of leadership skills. So I hope some of you guys will want to do it. We're going to have applications coming out 6th week if you want to sign up. And there's something up here that you can sign on after class if you want, or talk to either of us at any time. Any questions? Yeah, that's the only minor it counts for right now. We're trying to get it with the geography environmental studies minor, but we're still unclear about that yet. You can't drop, because if we don't allow that, just because then half the team could drop off if you don't. Like, it needs to keep it like a pretty tight. There's only so many people working on one project, so you need to keep the entire team throughout. So you pretty much sign on for 2 quarters when you sign up.
We also recognize that your schedule is going to change by quarter, and so there's definitely flexibility with that. It's not like a fixed thing. You're not signing up for one time for both quarters.
Any other questions? No. Okay, wonderful. Well, yeah, talk to us after class. So right now we're going to have Michael and Mia Lair. They're both architects. Michael is from Michael Lair Associates, and he works on many different projects. He did the first LEED Platinum Museum, the Water Plus Life Museum, and he'll tell you more. And then we're going to have Mia Lair, who's a landscape architect. She's worked on projects such as the LA River, urban parks and revitalization projects. So they'll give you a good sense of how building and architecture and our whole city combine with sustainability. So here's Michael.
I'm really excited. Actually, I guess art is easier to find 3 words than architecture. That would be a lot of words to develop a volunteer program for. But art and architecture are definitely related, and I'm excited for us to be here because the subject matter and some of the speakers you've had are very much in keeping with what we do and what we're passionate about. And I'm hoping that what we present today will help you in terms of proceeding with your art program. My name is Michael Lair. I have a practice I founded in 1985, Lair Architects, LA. And I'm from Los Angeles. I live in the neighborhood I was born in and practice in, and in Los Feliz and Silver Lake. I decided to become an architect when I was 8. I was in love with a girl in 3rd grade whose father was an architect. And by the time I was 10, my reasons for being an architect haven't really changed too much. And we'll explore some of those things today. My wife, Mia, became a landscape architect, started studying landscape architecture. She was an environmental studies major in undergraduate school at Tufts, and then started an environmental studies master's program at Tufts, and came over to Harvard to take some classes, and then decided, in landscape architecture, she can actually do something about that. And we met at Harvard in 34 years ago. So the title for today, and we'll be using the words of sustainability, and I'm hoping in a robust way, in the fullest way possible, certainly in terms of what it means in today's conversation, which is essential to continue to live and sustain life on the planet, but all the other things that allow for sustainable existence. I think one of the reasons that we're architects is that the idea of materializing ideas, the notion of materializing ideas, bringing them into the world, is a powerful notion. So in the beginning, I've titled this Sustainable Partnering, and together and separately, that applies to everybody, all of us together. In our case, it also applies to my wife and I, and we have we have our own practices, and we do work together often, and we've produced 3 children together. one of whom is 29 and is studying architecture right now. Oh, let's see, twice. So what I'm going to do, the first, did it go away? Oh my goodness, let's see. No? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Some of these phrases are important to me, and hopefully they have some meaning. And for me, the idea is this notion of the beauty of sustainability and the sustainability of beauty as a coming together. That, and we'll talk about beauty also as a sort of a high concept. And that clearly today making sustainable everything, we are understanding how essential it is to continue life and a good life on the planet. But there's also the idea, the sustainability of beauty, that when things are beautiful, when they touch the soul and the spirit, they are also much more sustainable because they are things and places and activities of desire. So the idea is that beauty and sustainability are an inseparable couplet, at least as an architect. I like to believe that that's what distinguishes what we do. The idea that our gift, hopefully, and mission is to integrate beauty and sustainability. And that beauty is a rudiment of human dignity. The projects we'll look at today range from individual buildings to regional design projects. And so if you keep those concepts in mind, I'll talk about some words and how they might relate. So there's the notion of sustainable practice, and practice being what you do regularly, and if you do it regularly, hopefully you get better and better at it. And that's what sustainable, as an architect, as a lawyer, whatever it is that you do, as a student, in the art program, all of those things, how do you do them and what conviction do you do them with? Practicing sustainability, again, you're doing it and you will do it even more so in the coming few weeks and quarters. Sustaining community. Community is inseparable. And this notion, coming back to sustainable partnering, that doing things alone is in opposition to sustainable endeavors. A community is essential to achieve robust, sustainable outcomes. A loving community, I personally have a problem, maybe not in your generation, but there's this a phrase called giving back. And I find it a little bit self-ennobling. And I prefer to call it loving community, an act of communal intimacy. And the idea is that it's the pleasure of participating in community. We do these things, you're going to be doing them, you are doing them, not because you're so noble, although you might be, but because it feels good to make a difference. I mean, it's just a human pleasure to do good things. And ultimately, I'm a big believer in that if you want to do something and sustain the activity over the course of a lifetime, it has to be pleasurable. It has to make you happy. Loving community, sustainable love, that whether it's loving of community, loving yourself, loving your partner, loving your family. In what we do in our work, these kind of all get blended together. Beauty and love are high notions. Sort of beauty is to pretty and nice as love is to like. And so both are sort of have transcendent qualities. They have a critical mass of wonderful qualities that they kind of exist unto themselves. You know, you see somebody, he or she looks real pretty, and they open their mouth and you say, whoa, no beauty. You see somebody else and you don't think, well, pleasant enough looking, whatever, and then you start talking to the person, you start getting to know them, and all of a sudden there are all these levels of knowledge you have of this person, and you look at them and they make you happy. And you realize there's a resonance, there's a critical mass of good things happening and then you realize you're in love, and you wonder, how did I ever think this person wasn't beautiful? So beauty and love to me are very analogous and important in that way, and sort of loving sustainability, same idea. So happiness, joy, and delight. Delight is probably a defining virtue of architecture. And in neuroscience today, it turns out that just solving a functional problem or trying to solve it isn't going to get you there. You need to be able to get into a reverie. Your brain has to be able to have, whether it's doodling or looking at a view or something that engages you. And so delight is not a luxury item. It's an essential attribute of a functional and productive environment. And then the notion of making. Making is a primal pleasure, I believe. I think the reason most of us stop drawing when we're 8 years old is not because it's not important, but it's such a big deal to make a mark that when you're about 8 or 9 years old and you make an ugly mark, it freaks you out and it's very painful. It's a primal activity, and when you can actually make something, it's a powerful human fix, whether it's a little sketch or a building or a landscape or a successful program, whatever. So to love making, and it's it could be a toast to love making, but it's also to love making. And the idea that making stuff and leaving a mark, first for your own pleasure and then for the pleasure of others, is a very powerful and fine thing to do. And our bias here, of course, is that we're both makers of things. So I think these are true. And then the thing that we do, probably our ultimate expertise as architects and landscape architectures, is the expertise of synthesis. Taking disparate, opposing imperatives and somehow putting them together and always imagining optimistic outcomes out of problems and oppositions. Another nice little thing to consider is that if you use an anesthetic to deaden the senses, then the aesthetic then is to be fully alive. And again, I'm sort of sharing core beliefs, stuff that informs everything that we do. And for me, I would say that the spiritual and the aesthetic are pretty much analogous, kind of the same thing. And that light and space and spirit, I would refer to them as the ether of life. It's sort of the realm, the zone in which we exist. And when it's good, good places actually, I wouldn't call this room actually necessarily one of those good places. No natural light, no connection to the exterior. But good places actually elevate the moment, whatever it is, whether you're studying, learning, working, playing, elevate the experience of life so that you feel it's good to be alive. And then this is my personal definition of architecture. Architecture is the shaping of space. So number one, the first thing you do is you shape space. How do you do it? You do it with objects in light. So light is a rudiment. Without light, you don't really have architecture. To create practical and emotive places. So kind of you got to solve a problem. If you don't solve the problems, it probably ain't much architecture. And if it doesn't touch your senses and touch your soul, it probably isn't architecture either. So the theme, we'll look through a few projects here. The theme then I called Making Home, and looking at the range of building and building types as home and in all that means, a place of nurture, a place that houses stuff, and then sustains life. The first project is Homes for the Homeless, and this is the downtown drop-in center in Skid Row. I did that 10 years ago, going on 2 million visits on San Julian Street, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 32 beds for people to sleep for the homeless to sleep in a clean bed for up to 8 hours, to remind them of the pleasures of shelter, to encourage them to re-engage in society. Down the block from there, very slow fade, is the Jim Woods Community Center on the same street. This is the living room for Skid Row, where people can have a meal during the day, have classes, performances, and this really is for the folks who live in the single-room occupancy hotels around there. A very important community in Los Angeles, a very important community in every city. So every place has a bottom. Some places the bottom may be higher or lower than the other, but every place has a bottom, and how you deal with the people at the bottom is a defining characteristic of what kind of society you are. And then there are homes for the homed that we also do. This is a beach house in Capistrano Beach that sustains comfort and romance. If you have the means and the will and the ambition to create your own home, it deals with your own aspirations and dreams about what life can be. And this is a home that's finishing construction a few miles from here. If it looks large, it's about 12,000 square feet. And if you think it's indulgent for one person, you should know that it's actually for two people. And that's a picture of the model. It's about 15 feet long in our studio. Homes for the spirit, the sustained collective aspiration and introspection. This is a synagogue campus in Newport Beach, 5-acre campus. The idea of campus or village, actually you can apply that to a house, to an ensemble of rooms, or to a village or to any buildings, and sort of creating an overall campus. This is a project that, well, all these projects Mia and I have done together. This actually is an overflow parking area, and the idea, of course, here is that you park cars in a park, you don't put trees in a parking lot. So in terms of watershed management, you know, water retention, absorption on the site, things you may or may not know about. I'm sure Andy talked about it. Mia will talk, her projects are very focused on those sort of things, among others. And then here are homes for the infrastructure of community that sustain founding values. This is the center, the Registrar Recorder County Clerk Elections Operations Center, where all the ballots are prepared and stored for every election in Los Angeles County. A 100,000 square foot warehouse, a new warehouse that we built into. We worked with a professor of art here. Some of you may know her or studied with her. Rebecca Mendez was the artist. We conceived of these large banners as cost-effective ways to define and engage to create like a 35,000 square foot room, and really helped the people who work here define themselves. We told them that they were the infrastructure of democracy, and they were the enablers of democracy, and they had never thought of themselves that way, and that their place had to actually reflect that and honor their activity for the people who work there and for those who visit and for all of us. This was right before the last November election. Now you see a bunch of balloting materials. And then homes for work that sustain the rudimentary joy of production, counting nature to do the work. This is our own studio in Silver Lake, and the one wall is blown open to a garden. It's open most of the day. This was the space before. That solid wall in the end was blown open, and that's the way it is now. And it's about light and air and work and community and the individual, and it's a sustainable environment by design, but we didn't design it to be sustainable. We designed it to be a great place to work for not a lot of money. So I blew out the end wall. We painted the floors and all the surfaces white, so when the light comes in, it just dances around all day, and then painted a bunch of doors white to make our furnishing. And we don't use artificial light for almost 8 or 9 months of the year, well, maybe 7 or 8 months of the year. And we use air conditioning and heating when we need it to be comfortable, which isn't very often. We're comfortable all the time. And we imagined it to be sort of a place for work and sort of a private community place, and a place that embodies our own values about community, about work, about process, about happiness and joy, and the joy of work. And then homes that tell the story of sustaining life. And this is a project which is brand new. It's a collaboration for Andy Lipkis, who you know, and it's a collaboration between myself and where is Sebastian, my colleague Sebastian Munoz, and one or two of my other colleagues. And this is an interesting project. It's spawned by the idea that a bunch of these Canariensis pines are diseased around the city, and the city is sort of beginning to take them down. This is in Beverly Hills, particularly on Coldwater, where Tree People Campus is. So the notion was, can we actually do something with these pines and use them and take them a mile up the street and create a new, what we call, working forest, which has some of the attributes of our own studio, made with the wood there. It would be milled on site, so it would have the richness of wood. It would be, the carbon footprint would be really lean, and hopefully be a joyous place to work, it as part of the forest. And then the project I'll go into a little more depth into is the Water and Life Museums, and these are the first LEED Platinum museums in the world. They're 100 miles from here. And basically, here's the team. I was the architect, and Mia was the landscape architect. And the idea of the team here is just to understand that this project became an environmental showcase because of extreme partnering, extreme collaboration. And it happened, our goal was not to get to where we got. Our goal was just to do the best project we could do. And because we worked with respect and tremendous with respect, it was fun, and we all did among our best work. So here's the green story. So in sustainable world, which we're all in, it all begins with hope, right? And then, so it is like motherhood and apple pie, right? I mean, you can't be against sustainability, right? I mean, even if you are against it, you can't say it, right? But, so what happens, I'll describe a typical 3-hour board meeting that we had along the way of designing this project, and this is really, I think this is still largely true. In hour 1 of the board meeting, we present our sustainable ideas, and everybody is just delighted, dancing around, and at least dancing in the fields in their mind, right? And there's complete buy-in. In hour number 2, get down to business, don't talk much about the, like what are all the other things we have to take care of in the project in this meeting. And then in hour number 3, cost is presented for those sustainable projects, and there's no memory of hour number 1. The board goes nuts and asks, why on earth would we do this? It's too expensive for this project. And then you get acceptance basically through partnership, through leadership, through honesty, through risk-taking, tenacity, cajoling, good nature, and not over-promising. And skepticism is universal and not inappropriate. So you deal with it with honesty, but you have to be clear, you have to show leadership, you have to believe in what it is you're doing, and you have to be willing to take the requisite risks. And then everybody needs to be on the same side. It is not, absolutely not business as usual. It is not second nature yet. The answer is not, we can't do it, but the answer, which is a result of partnering, is, how can we make this happen? And this is not a no-brainer, it is a brainer. And once again, the mission is to achieve beauty and sustainability as an inseparable couplet. These are the Water and Life Museum's Water Equals Life, No Water Equals No Life. The project is part of the California water system. It is located at Diamond Valley Lake, which brings in water from the Colorado River and the California Aqueduct, and meets and mixes at Diamond Valley Lake. 7 years to locate a site in California. They found Diamond Valley between, let's see, I have a laser pointer somewhere. Diamond Valley is between these two mountain ranges, and so what was done was they also could locate, provide rock from the site, and they built 6 miles of dams. The 3-mile east dam, the quarter-mile north dam, and the 2-mile west dam. And they're about 300 feet high to turn Diamond Valley into a lake. The spoils from the lake, the dams are put there. Here's the pump house. And this is a canal which brings all the water from those two water systems, California and Colorado. Every ounce of water that goes, drinkable water in San Diego, comes through this canal. And then in return to the community, one of the returns was putting a nature reserve around it. The site for the museums is beneath the East Dam. And what we did was we have a 17-acre campus of buildings and interpretive gardens. Architecturally, the challenge was how do you, if not compete, how do you complement this large form, which to most lay people just looks like another, highway infill going through the mountains around in Southern California, and how do you complement it when you're only building a relatively small building? So here are the buildings as they sit in the landscape. In building the dams, they went 150 feet into bedrock and found extraordinary Pleistocene era bones, and that became the basis of the Life Museum, or the Western Center for Archaeology and Paleontology. Among the things we look at, these are some of our visual preoccupations: seriality, primal simple geometric form, and the rudiments, the basics. And this is a sculpture by Richard Long, Andy Goldsworthy, Don Judd, Andy Warhol, Sol LeWitt, sort of guys from the 60s and 70s who are still pretty beautiful. And then we also looked at actually the forms of the infrastructure itself, the machinery of making, the pipes that push the water, the turbines that push the water, and the dams. The electric manifold, this guy. And Parker Dam, which is where the Colorado River, where the Colorado Aqueduct begins. One of the things ultimately in doing a sustainable project, how you do the interpretive work, how do you interpretive signage. These are the signs from the lead points around the campus. From the beginning, building and landscape were one conception. And to sort of the point I've been making all along here, it says, I've got good news and bad news. The good news, what is it? Your building is very green. It earned the highest possible LEED rating, platinum. And the bad news, the building is still ugly. And both the sustainable mission and making a serious piece of architecture were not really a mandate of the client. It was the design team that pushed it. Here's some diagrams of our many environmental systems. I'll go quickly through. This is our LEED scorecard. It was done on the computer, but we put it all together and made a postcard out of it, a poster. Among the types of things where saving energy is the most important thing you can do, obviously, in making a sustainable building. We have heating and cooling in the floors, and then some minor heating and cooling through the air. And so this is the signage, trucks are walking on water. 7 miles of pipes going through all the floors. It's a very efficient way to use energy to just slightly warm the floor, slightly cool it, and then it makes the rest of the space comfortable. This is the arcade on both sides of the courtyard. It's the architectural word for it is loggia. The loggia are covered with photovoltaic cells, and they take light. The idea is to celebrate the light, harness it, and then and control it. So what we do is we capture. These are photovoltaic cells, and then you get this sort of whole play of light, reverie of light and shadow, and I think that's a good thing. I think it feels good for everybody. I know it makes me happy. These are some other views of the loggia. And then we used banners on the east elevation. The banners are pixelated images of, this is of Diamond Valley Lake from above. This is of bones from the collection of the museum. As you approach them, sort of like a Chuck Close painting, they dissolve into pictures of artifacts from the collection. They dramatically reduce the east morning light coming into these walls of glass. It's all, of course, state-of-the-art glass. Whoops. And there you can see how architecture, the architecture and the landscape and the planting are all sort of one conception. I would say I am a natural light junkie. It's my major fix, and how you exploit it and control it is a major part of the art of architecture. One thing that's important to me is if you make a solid wall to control difficult light, it can control the light, just you can never do anything else about it. Sometimes you can actually have a glass wall for a view, and you can close it off when you need to control the light as a basic point. This is a computer drawing, but this is what the roofs look like. So the entire facility is covered with photovoltaic cells. It's a 540 kilowatt installation. Over the first year and a half, it produced 16 gigawatts of power. And when it prevented the building, there were almost 2 million pounds of CO2 not produced, the equivalent of 1 million miles of autos not driven, or 77,000 trees planted. And then I will just about hand off here. Here just 3 lead points. The heat island effect, having as much softscape and shaded-scape as possible, was an important consideration here. We really minimized that. And then we used the waste material from the dam was one of our major ground covers. And Mia will talk about the braided streams there. And then we keep virtually all the water on site. This is sort of a winter wetland here. So all the rainwater that lands on the site or on the buildings comes across the street into this field and then gets absorbed into the ground. And with that, I will pass off to Mia Lair. So thank you. Hello.
Yeah. Okay, so as Michael was describing, well, I don't know if he mentioned it, that the the reservoir is actually for 6 months of emergency water supply for this for the city of Los Angeles. So all of Southern California. Okay, so the idea being, of course, there's a big emergency, and we can get, we would all be depending on this reservoir. We always conceived of the site as a demonstration, as a really important way of communicating to the visitors everything one could, from a sustainability perspective, how to live light on the land, how to celebrate the agriculture from this area of the state, and how to celebrate and acknowledge how water gets to us in the urban areas, but also the beauty of water. So we came up with a way of describing sort of an experience. Oh, yes. The space button? Okay. And so we had a series of exhibits that actually, for example, here you'd have the California Aqueduct, and these would be a series, basically a braided stream, and then a series of paleontological exhibits across the site. So, space button is not cooperating, Michael, there. No. Oh, there you go. So, this is just some inspiration, what the aqueduct, the braided stream. I don't know if all of you know that in Southern California, of course, we don't have regular rivers. It's basically, they're seasonal rivers, and they happen to move throughout the lowest point of a valley, and they moved around. In olden days, when the urban areas hadn't been developed, they just kind of moved around. Like in the LA Basin, they would move around downtown, sometimes one mile one way or another. So we wanted to really explain what a braided stream was about. And here it is, a braided stream. And so if it's not raining or whatever, there's actually soil there. And here's the real braided stream. And what we did is we used the spoils from the work in creating the dams, and actually created a way, and basically it's the drainage course for the project. And so instead of hiding it in a pipe, we're actually using it, and it becomes a part of the landscape. And there's a group of young people visiting the LEED accredited museum, and they're walking through the braided stream. And we also did a California friendly demonstration garden, and that's a term that was coined by the Department of Water and Power. And basically it means not just native plants, but plants that don't need very much water. And as you all know, we're in a big water crisis in Southern California. And so California-friendly plants become incredibly important. Here is a visitor actually appreciating some of the LEED accredited accreditation signage, trying to understand what they're looking at. Actually, amazingly enough, and I guess if there's multi-benefit to all these projects, the fact that somebody's actually getting married here is a good sign. That was nice vegetation that was in bloom, Fremontodendron. It makes me excited when I see them. Another project that I want to talk about that relates to the whole water system is the LA River Revitalization Master Plan. And again, now I've talked about the braided streams. That was the LA River. How many of you know where the LA River is?
We're going on a field trip there.
You are? Okay. There's only about 8 of you who know where the LA River is, so I'm glad you're going on a field trip. I happen to think it's beautiful, but it's different. How many of you come from Southern California? Okay. How many of you come from Northern California? How many of you come from the middle of the country? Okay. How many of you come from the East Coast? How many of you come from other countries? Interesting. Okay. Just interesting. Because rivers in other countries and probably even in other parts of the country look very different, and they don't typically have a governor and a motorcycle in them either. So when we think of the LA River and the work that we've done along the river, one of the things we look at, and from a sustainability perspective, in terms of what the world looks to Los Angeles is, there's a tremendous responsibility, because through the movies, Hollywood conveys this notion that anything that they do in Los Angeles is okay to do, and in fact it's worse. You want to do what people do in Los Angeles. Everybody wants their own little paradise. I mean, in China and Japan, people started building, sort of estates, as opposed to consolidating development. And so this is one of the responsibilities we feel we have in sharing with the world good planning. And now what we're trying to do is undo the bad planning, which was what happened to the river here, it was channelized. This is the whole of the county and the Santa Monica Mountains, the San Gabriel Mountains, and basically this is the channelization of the river. It had other courses in the past, and we worked on 32 miles of the river. And watersheds. All of you know what a watershed is? Pretty much? Well, okay. Well, it's basically the controlled area that is controlled by sort of a rise in topography. And here you see all the water goes into this area through these tributaries. The white is the LA watershed. Then there's Bayona Creek, Malibu Creek, Dominguez Channel, and San Gabriel River watershed. So there's 5 watersheds in the county of Los Angeles. This is what our river looks like. Its birthplace is right here at the headwaters at Canoga Park High School. Hello. And here, as it's coming through Studio City and Ferraro Fields and Griffith Park, as it was forced to turn, and then as it's going through Confluence in downtown. And what were the goals? And the reason, by the way, that the river was channelized was because in the late 1940s there were these huge floods. And so people who were living in areas adjacent to the river, like around Studio City, all started losing their homes. And certainly the elected officials, the agencies are all there to protect our health and well-being. And so in order to protect the community, the neighbors from flooding, the Corps of Engineers came forward with a plan to use the concrete and basically harness the river and do what they do best, is to create this really efficient system of getting water all the way down to the ocean as fast as possible. Of course, along with that came a lot of pollutants, and eventually so many pollutants that the ocean started being tremendously impacted. And because of many federal regulations, now all of a sudden there was going to be some fines that were going to be levied all across the country. These are federal regulations. If you are in control of how water gets into your river, and the quality of water that you deliver to the ocean is going to be basically monitored. And they're called TMDLs, total maximum daily loads. And if you have all these, this bad water quality, you're going to pay big fines. So all these cities got their act together and they said, okay, well, if I'm going to do something about this issue, I might as well solve all the problems while I'm on my way. And in doing that, I could create parks, I could create new communities, I could deal with this asset in a different way. So these are the goals, and it's about greening neighborhoods, creating value, and that means in terms of improving water quality, and also capturing opportunities in terms of civic pride. How can people celebrate the river and not just think about it as sort of a dumping ground? and revitalizing the river by enhancing flood storage and water quality and public access. Right now, by the way, if you do go visit the river, you're trespassing and it's an illegal act. But you can do it anyway. So here you see kind of what our, the goals were to do a continuous greenway, to work with the tributaries and extend into the watershed, because we were supposed to just study 200 feet on either side of the river, which all the environmentalists like Andy Lipkis were complaining. I mean, how can you possibly study a river? First of all, we were only studying 32 out of 54 miles because the city and the county couldn't politically get themselves on the same page. But we were also only studying 250, 300 feet on either side because they couldn't afford to do a bigger, more robust study. So we kind of went beyond our study area anyway, and at least in the initial effort, started looking at the opportunities. And this is the kind of thing you do when you're doing community work and you're doing this kind of sustainability work. You're trying to educate the community about the issues and help them understand decisions they might be able to make along the way, some of which might be when you vote. When you go out and you vote, whether you might be voting on a local election or you might be voting on a national election. What are the issues that you're kind of getting engaged in? And so here you see the whole process. This is actually a model of what a watershed is for children during those meetings, so they also get to understand. And of course, what happened was that in terms of this particular study, that there were a lot of nonprofits and people like Friends of the LA River who were very involved. And you can see just by the major comments that people really understood the issues and were pretty sophisticated. Here you see what that Canoga Park entrance looked like. And this is the river as it goes through the basin. And this was what the river the area near downtown used to look like before it got channelized. Here you see the freeway grid and the river below. By the way, the river is the only piece of infrastructure that's on grade that goes the 54 miles. Everything else, the thousands of miles of freeway, all hover above us. Nothing's on grade. So you have this incredible disconnection with nature. Just a quick thing, and this is what right now the channel looks like. This is what the channel, if you were to take all the concrete out, this is how wide it would be. So it's actually impossible to take all the concrete out because you would be displacing many, many people. This is kind of this network that we're proposing where you're connecting schools and libraries and parks to the river. So you have a whole new set of networks. And on the way, you're, of course, creating green streets, and you're planting many more trees. So you're creating a sort of a new paradigm for Los Angeles with an urban forest that's robust, and that wherever you see sycamores, you can get down to the river and get there comfortably. And that it's not always about 32 miles. Sometimes it's about your neighborhood. It's the neighborhood in Atwater or in Studio City, and like you can do an 8-mile loop, for example, and that you make it easy to get on the river and then across a bridge and back over. Has anybody ever tried to go on the LA River on their bicycle? I have a manhole cover in my backyard, and you can go from my backyard to the LA River.
Through your manhole?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a little dangerous. Don't tell anybody else that. So this is what it could look like. In other parts of the world, they've done this. Boston, Paris, other cities. This is in Elysian Park, and here you are having to deal with rail lines that you can consolidate, and despite many of the rail management folks, of course you could actually still keep the rail and be able to negotiate that access if you had a park up in this area, for example, in Broadway. Or the notion that in one of the more industrial areas, and there are, let's say a few hundred people working here,
instead of having this kind of access, that you could have that kind of access, and that this becomes now a part of the city, and so that you face the river instead of giving you its back. And the streets and the potential open parks that could exist along it. And here you see up in Studio City where you could actually make a major change and make it feel more like a river by planting and adding access and enhancing the identity by having lots of bridges so you can always get across and you're not scared. Because sometimes it's like 2 or 3 miles between the big arterial or vehicular bridges, so you want to make it more comfortable. And what you could do in terms of art, and where we are right now is that it was adopted as a plan 2 years ago now. Ooh. And there is a river unit within the planning department, and that there's there's a foundation and a corporation that have been founded, and that there is now, just like with LEED, it's basically a point system. If you are a developer and you want to do something within 2 blocks of the river, you have to be able to get a certain number of points related to green building, related to parking, related to how you deal with your stormwater, of course. And so we're really excited that it's gotten to this point, and that the river unit and the people who work in the river unit are very passionate about this project. They actually, are constantly working. They're working full time on trying to make a lot of these projects happen, buying land, working in Washington to try to get funding, and further developing the plan. And that's in our work, that's really important, is that when you do a larger scale master plan than, let's say, a project that you actually build, that what you're doing is developing a framework. So from a sustainability point of view, what you're trying to do is develop a framework so that different projects can start happening, and that there's a process that identifies the issues related to permeable paving, related to canopy, relating to all the different issues that that need to be addressed, and in terms of sustainability. I'm working on most of these projects. You work on with teams, large teams of people, urban ecologists, hydrologists. The people who deal with rivers are called fluvial geomorphologists. I love that I could say that really quickly now. And you're always working. Sometimes you also work with architects, other landscape architects. The projects are really large. And everybody brings a slightly different perspective to these projects, and of course, expertise, technical expertise. This is the Orange County Great Park. Anybody here from Orange County? Anybody here knows where the El Toro Marine Base is? Anybody here been on the Orange Balloon? Yay! Very good. Anyway, the Orange County Great Park is 1,300 acres, and Central Park is 843 acres. So the Great Park is actually almost twice as big as Central Park. A significant piece of open space. Here you see this is the Orange Curtain right here, and this is Orange County right here, and it connects. So one of the first sustainability aspects of this is that it manages, by fluke, an old Navy base, happens to basically connect the 2 wilderness areas. So there are many, many critters that have been run over as they're trying to go through 2-3 freeways to get to this second, back and forth, that now are going to be able to connect. So that's one of the first achievements. So this, and from a cultural, social, economic perspective, it's right smack in the middle of the county. It's also, it has the opportunity of really bringing the community together, a very suburban community, the antithesis, I guess, in a way, of sustainability. So this is what it looks like, very flat. And it was closed a number of years ago and then purchased by the Lennar Corporation with an agreement that of the 4,400 acres, 1,300 acres would be at the heart of the new community and a destination for the region. So as you can see, and it was a competition. Many of the types of projects that we all work on are competitions. And here you see a canyon, 2.5-mile canyon. This is the one that connects the two areas. A sports park area, a cultural district with sites for several museums and an amphitheater, a botanical garden, and then a more agricultural zone, the Fields and Memorial, and an arboretum, a bosque. And this is a grading, massing study of what that would look like from the engineers. Again, the project, the vision, sort of a more sort of up-close view. And what our sustainability goals were. And you always think about, you have to be very methodical about this. We actually have a sustainability calculator. So just like you saw with the river, that form to fill out when you're going for a permit, here we were hoping to sort of check our team and how well we were doing with a sustainability calculator. And here you see the different ways we want to make sure that we are addressing sustainability issues related to energy, nature, materials, people, and water, and that it starts conceptually with personal health. If you're healthy, you eat well, you do exercise, you're emotionally healthy, that you start connecting to your region because you start understanding your connections, and that eventually that leads you to become a better steward and connecting to the globe. And it's a different way than the way sustainability is usually looked at, which is 3 circles that kind of interconnect. We were thinking you really start kind of internally relating, understanding, educating yourself, and then it moves out that way. And again, we call this the living park, and meaning that the park itself and the way it's developed starts relating to the community at large. So any of the activities that happen in the park relate to understanding sustainability, or for example, citizen science programs, so people understand how many birds are coming back. This used to be this is a place where large airplanes used to come and go. There were no birds there, and there are not too many trees there. But in the future, for example, you could monitor that. And that level of understanding starts getting back to the schools. So, for example, you could have little cameras at your school, in your elementary school, that starts looking at the nest of the new eagles that are starting to be born. So that there's this connectivity, and that we always think of the park infrastructure and the neighborhood connections as a way of really understanding sustainability. This is getting into the habitats and some of the natural systems. Transportation, we called it, which for Orange County, a little unusual, but basically it's basically park once and spend the day. So you either get there by Amtrak and Metrolink, where there is a stop, or you park along the edges of the park. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 parking lots. And no, this was a fight not to have any cars in the center of the site, but a fight that we won on with the argument that from a sustainability perspective, if you really wanted to restore habitat and you really wanted to get people doing exercise, they got to park their car and start getting out there and really engaging. And this is Central Park, and these are the beauty. This is the beauty and the real connection in the city to nature. And imagine if Central Park wasn't there. And we actually present this. Used to present this to the naysayers on the park as an idea. And the next piece of work on that is that in this park, many people want to do other programs than what we think are desirable given our sustainability mission. So we show this caricature about what Central Park would have looked like if every proposal that ever came forward over the last 100 years would have gotten built, which incidentally is the reason that the reservoir was just called the Jackie Onassis Jackie Kennedy Onassis Reservoir is because many people had ideas of what that reservoir should be, so the managers of the park said, we better deal with it, and they got a donation and they got basically a designation. Otherwise, they were going to cover it over and build other things on it. And this is the ultimate in community outreach. In order to help the community understand what it is we were planning, we actually had a large plan of the project, and people could walk around, and then they had like a passport, and they could identify on the things that they felt good about or not good about, that they needed more help understanding, and it became an unbelievable tool in helping people to understand the elements of the park. And I think that's basically where I'd like to conclude and open it up to questions. I guess if there was enough water in Los Angeles in rainstorms, we only get 15 inches maximum a year. More and more it's looked like as a way of basically re-injecting water into the groundwater table. So, we keep our water storage at the same levels, and we can manage that better. Typically, if you want to use water to harness energy, you need a big drop in elevation, and you need a lot of infrastructure.
Although, one imagines the way technology is allowing us to look at all sorts of materials in ways we never have. It's kind of, one could imagine something with evaporation and somehow harnessing the water in the street. But streets are probably maybe the single most potent piece of infrastructure that in their transformation, the way we recapture water, clean the water, get rid of impermeable surfaces, probably the single largest piece of infrastructure that would transform the carbon footprint possibly of the city.
What's the cost-benefit analysis economically for a project like this? In other words, what will it do for the economy overall? And then also, what kind of obstacles do you face in funding the crisis?
Are you talking about Orange County or LA River? The master plan team included a economist, and there was a cost-benefit analysis, and it's, you're welcome to look at it on www.lariver.org, and the master plan's all on there. It's a tremendous benefit because there's just in terms of jobs and in terms of water and water quality infrastructure issues. I know Andy must have talked about that if we don't build the same old-fashioned infrastructure, which performs one duty, but instead it performs two or three, like water and water quality through parks, for example. You're building a park that actually filters water. So right there, you're saving half your money. So it's a complex set of calculations, but the benefit is tremendous.
Also taking a condition of blight, which right now proximity to the river is generally relates to what are viewed as blighted neighborhoods, right? They're dangerous. The river is has been a threatening place because it's not fundamentally a public place. And once you transform it and create amenities, and you begin to create places of desire, I mean, the impact of that in terms of building value in the land, in communities, in the real estate, and places that people want to live I mean, I'm speaking qualitatively. It's quantifiable to some degree, but qualitatively, it's not. I mean, intuitively, what you would think is right. I mean, think about places you like to be, and think about places you don't like to be. Think about, maybe you're not old enough, but if you've lived in a community or in a city long enough to remember neighborhoods which were not desirable places, which are now becoming cool places to live. I mean, downtown LA is one, Hollywood is another. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, Hollywood would be like a really undesirable place to live. And those kind of changes dramatically affect sort of quality of life and land value.
I imagine you're probably familiar with some of the literature on ecological services. And so it would probably be, it's a way to address this issue of economic value. But in terms of the, obviously, because many of these projects are private-public partnerships, so on the LA River, a lot of the infrastructure work could have been done with large investments from private developers who actually wanted to benefit from these infrastructure improvements to basically go into projects. Well, clearly that's not happening, at least not in the next couple of years. I think that there is, on the flip side of that, obviously the federal government is very interested in infrastructure improvements. And so, it might be that for example, they've bought a couple large pieces of land right now because now's the time, and they've coupled the funding. These projects take about 10 years to implement, 10 to 25 years.
Also, another takeaway idea, and it relates to when I was talking earlier about the notion of delight, and that is what we have been very good in Los Angeles at doing is creating significant infrastructure that solves a functional problem, but that pays no attention to delight. So the LA River was converted from a wild river into a storm drainage channel, but there was no attention paid to create. When they did that, the quantum money was spent in all that concrete work and engineering. For a relatively small additional increment, had they said, oh, we're going to solve these problems and we're going to mend and enhance the communities along the way. At that time, that's a design mentality, right? That's imagining out of solving a specific functional problem, there are all these other opportunities to create beautiful and important places. So that's an important thing to understand. When people talk about infrastructure, the question has to be, okay, we're solving this infrastructural problem. How can we be opportunistic every single time to create a park system when we're solving a flooding problem? To create community centers when we're solving a shortage of school seats.
Okay. So yes?
How much stimulus funding do you see going to green building projects or landscape projects?
So far, actually, I don't think that believe it or not, it's not obvious yet. I mean, everybody has applications out. I'm not sure that the funding hasn't actually been divvied up that I know of until now. So.
And funding has been going, to the extent that funding goes for infrastructure, it goes for infrastructure in the most, sort of the one-line version of it, not infrastructure that can actually resonate and become so many other things. So that's the challenge for all of us.
But, I mean, there will be infrastructure money for these projects. It's just not evident yet. Anybody else?
Well, I know there's a lot of new technology coming out with regards to green building and this kind of thing. To what extent are regulatory agencies standing in the way of that, and how would you envision changing those agencies to promote new technology?
I think regulatory agencies are encouraging it gradually because that's what regulatory agencies do what the law tells them to do. And inevitably, when you're in the design profession, you have something in the code which doesn't make any sense, but it probably started out as some noble idea in response to an earthquake or a tragedy or an energy crisis. So part of the change in culture is to get, sort of to get bureaucrats, which can happen, to think creatively with you, to interpret codes. But remember I said, sort of, these things are not business as usual. It means not business as usual on top of even a well-intentioned regulator or a well-intentioned anybody. If it's business as usual means doing it the way we're used to doing it, and that this project won't be the special project, it'll be someone else's project. But I think the culture is changing, and I think that to the extent, like all of you, I suspect, are energized by the mission of this class here, and just by being alive at this time, and the ability to actually, participate in changing the world. So when people get excited about it, that they can participate in doing it, but it's slow. I mean, remember when I talked about the 3-hour board meeting? I mean, people can be excited about it until they realize the effort or money it takes to do that. So it's slow, but it is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering, how possible or how likely is it that there's going to be like more and more green roofs? Because we already have so many buildings in LA. We can't just knock them down and rebuild them. That's not economically. And I've been thinking about, I don't know.
Adapting?
Adapting.
It's not easy to adapt, and it's not really. There are two issues with green roofs in California, and that is that we have very little rain, and we also have earthquakes. So adding the load on a building, holding the soil and the plants and the wet soil, not just soil, is costly. Obviously, there's some gains in terms of heat and cooling, which is beneficial. I think a lot of new buildings are going to contemplate it. I doubt that having tried an adaptive roof myself and having had a hard time, I don't think it's going to be harder to do. They're not, and we also have fire problems on top of that. That people don't want to grow natives because a lot of the grasses die back, and so then you end up with a fire problem on your roof. So now you got to wet it. Now you got an additional problem. So I don't anticipate. I think maybe buildings won't change in the next 5 years, but in the next 10, 15 years there'll be a lot more buildings, and a lot of them could be green roofs.
I did my first year of college at UCLA, and I remember that was much more of a commuter school than it is today, but it had all the big parking structure. I was always very jealous of Berkeley, where I finished up my architecture undergraduate work. That all their parking structures had like tennis courts and all sorts of stuff on them. Roofs represent an awesome amount of real estate. There are green roofs. They are taking roofs and inhabiting them with human activity. There are solar collectors. That project I showed you, a 100,000 square foot election center. The county is interested, but we worked for like 5 months trying to make it happen. It's just difficult, maybe you will, of using their 100,000 square foot roof, covering it with photovoltaics so that they become significant sources of energy. I mean, that's very doable. Technology will help. The bureaucratic issues will help. And money will help. The other thing that does is it also further insulates the roof.
Fantastic. If you guys have more questions, you can definitely talk to them afterwards. But let's give them a wonderful round of applause. Thank you guys so much.
And actually, I just want to say that we need all of you. You're kind of part of the army that needs to get out there and vote and help elected officials who care about the right things, and get out and work in your communities. Make sure that you think the right things are being done. Get out and plant trees, and get out and clean rivers, and design nice buildings, and do all the things that
Don't back up yet, you guys.
Also, the roof for the
So we have two really quick announcements. You guys all know about Cool House. We have Natasha here is gonna introduce it real quick and just invite you guys all outside for some delicious ice cream sandwiches. And then we have one more announcement after that. So